Folks, I am super excited to bring you this video and interview today. Someone that I have closely followed, that I have learned from, and continues to be a massive leader, if not so one of the most forefront leaders, trainers, etc., in this whole side hustle gig space. He's someone that I took a lot of inspiration from, not only in what apps to use. Initially started my side hustle in 2015 here in Pittsburgh with Uber and Lyft, going to food delivery and DoorDash after that. And also inspiration right here on YouTube and growing a business here on YouTube. Simple, huge influence, awesome creator, has a whole team now. Harry Campbell with the Rideshare guy. Welcome.
Thanks for having me, Mike. I'd say I'm probably equally excited to be here. I feel like at this point, I've probably watched a ton of your videos. So it is kind of, when we first hopped on, I'm like, oh, wow, now I get to talk to him live in the flesh. So I'm sure a little vice versa, but definitely appreciate you having on. And it's been exciting to see all the growth of your channel over the past few years. So definitely kudos to you. And you've got a great audience yourself.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Folks, there's going to be so much value in this. So comment down below if you appreciate Harry. Take some time out of his busy day. He's got, again, a whole team, a lot of stuff going on, joining us from the Los Angeles area in California. I'm here in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. So Harry, I started my YouTube channel in 2017, my side hustle in 2015. You started even before that. Now, I'm really curious, because a lot of these questions I don't even know. So tell us, what inspired you to start with, what app did you even start with first? And why did you get into the gig space initially?
Yeah, so it's actually funny reason why I first signed up to drive with Lyft, and this was when I lived back in Orange County. And I remember that I was in Newport Beach at the time, and I remember Lyft was offering these hourly guarantees to get drivers started and to get them driving. And I was like, okay, free money, 20, 30 bucks an hour, sit there and watch Netflix. So I signed up for that. By the time I actually got signed up, that promotion was over. But, that was kind of my impetus for signing up for Lyft to start. And then, they had like a $500 bonus, sign up to drive with Uber. So I'm like, okay, I started with Lyft, signed up with Uber. I used to be an engineer. So I was a full-time aerospace engineer for Boeing. So kind of doing the opposite of what I do now, but, have always been open to new and, entrepreneurial ventures. So started driving for Uber and Lyft and pretty quickly started a blog about my experience. And I think especially, in the early days when I was doing all of the content, a lot of that early content was kind of like strategy, hacks, tips and tricks. It was like kind of why I signed up. I was like, oh, I could get free money for signing up right now, hourly guarantees. Let's do this, right? And it's like, how do I work as little as possible and make as much money as possible? And I think that sort of philosophy has definitely carried over to today. And I think that's also what people probably enjoy most. And, maybe we even have a reputation for, because I think a lot of our top contributors now are definitely, earning, definitely, above average. And I think we caveat, hey, not everyone can be above average, obviously, but one thing I do love about the gig economy is if you know what you're doing and you're kind of hustling, you can definitely do pretty well, or better than average at least.
I agree with that. And I tell our audience here that, look, delivering a pizza, picking up a passenger A to B. It's not hard, folks. It's no one, imagine before the gig economy, no one would say like, oh yeah, the pizza boy, you're an engineer yourself. And it's like, it's not the hardest thing in the world, but to maximize your income, if we talk just statistically, the standard bell curve of, the lesser, smaller part of the bell curve, most people in the middle, and then the highest earners in this case, you have to, you don't get there just by guessing and just falling into better pay, especially if you're doing this shift over shift. So you were looking at some of the incentives, some of the options here. Now, when was it time to try something new? Was it when you were comfortable with, let's say, rideshare, you wanted to try something else? Was something slowing down? When when did you pivot? And maybe if someone's watching this, when might they want to think about like adding different options on?
Yeah, no, I think that's a good question because I think a lot of my personal experience I've sort of ended up relaying in the form of advice or really principles, what I would call it, right? I think what I saw early on in my rideshare and, gig economy careers, when companies are new, when they're hot, when they're looking to expand, that's when you can make the most. That's when the best sign up bonuses, that's when the best weekly bonuses and incentives. So I always have had my eye out for new companies or, like I said, companies are trying to expand or have just raised a ton of money money. So I think that's one thing to always look out for. And then two, there is a learning curve. I always say it's not rocket science to be a rideshare driver or to deliver food, but there is a learning curve. If you just want to take whatever orders DoorDash gives you or Uber sends you, you'll do fine. You'll make some money. Maybe it'll be a lot. Maybe it'll be a little. Maybe it'll be enough for you. Maybe it won't. But if you do want to maximize your earnings, that's where it starts getting, frankly, it can get more complex. What is my earnings per mile? Thinking about like, okay, if I take this, especially with rideshare, right? If you kind of take this long 30-mile trip, but you get, 40, $50, but where does that position you? Does it position you where now you're not going to get any rides? You're going to have to sit in traffic to come back. So I think that's kind of where, you can definitely make more money, but you're going to have to work harder. And so I think understanding, are you that type of person? Not everyone is, and that's totally fine. So I think that's kind of where I have gravitated to and where I've sort of advised people, like, understand the type of driver you are, the type of gigs that you like, and you don't have to do it all at once. Like, my whole business has been about accelerating that learning curve. So if you start with rideshare, sign up for Uber or Lyft, start with one, figure it out, then add a second one for sure as a backup. If you're not feeling great about rideshare, you want to try something new, add a delivery company after you've kind of gotten the hang or mastered it or have figured out that, hey, this isn't working for you, right? I think a lot of my advice sort of revolves around, even like I was doing a video on Instacart shoppers the other day, and I was saying, hey, your first batch as an Instacart shopper, you should probably try and do it at a grocery store that you're familiar with. Like, why would you go, to some random grocery store and like work your ass off and, have to figure out all these different aisles and where things are? Like, start comfortable. Like, your number one goal right at the start doesn't need to be to make, 20, 30, 40, $50 an hour. It's like, figure out the system and then ease in from there.
Super powerful. Folks, drop a like of this video if you appreciate Harry being on the channel and just dropping that knowledge bomb, because yes, I agree. And actually, it's good that you're echoing a lot of, what we teach on the channel here. And we'll have resources for Harry's channel and his website, a lot of great training and resources on his site as well. So check that out after this video. But yeah, it's like when I started Shipt it's now Target owned, folks. It's a last mile, usually grocery convenience service, now owned by Target. Yes. Yeah. That, I don't know, it's 2019 or something, that it was on fire. I was doing videos. I was doing like 45 an hour or something crazy. Yeah. I mean, maybe it's related to acquisitions, because I can think about Roadie and now they're acquired by UPS. So there's something to be said about that. But yeah, it's like Harry said, there's an initial wave usually of introduction of strong bonus incentives, etc. Yeah. Learn the platforms and then learn the nuances and the strategies like Harry and I teach on our respective channels. And then once you're comfortable, you got to keep your options open, because what Harry and I were talking about this before the call, like, what if something changes? And I'll tell you this. I mean, Harry, you've seen it. Like, do you remember the bonus pay? You remember the surge pay and the Lyft multipliers back in 2014, 15? The platform's completely different.
Yeah. So, I mean, we even see, drivers that are doing both Uber and Lyft, right? If you're typically driving for Lyft and you don't drive for them for a few weeks or a few months, like, sometimes they get desperate and they're like, hey, Mike, here's a good bonus offer. Come back for 1 or 2 weeks, right? So it's like, there's a lot of kind of benefits if you're really out there. Like, and that's sort of why I like these gigs. It's all about like personal experience. I mean, you can kind of, I know it's obviously fun to complain about, certain trips or certain orders. Hey, what's up with this $2 order, $1 order? Like, what the hell? Negative order, right? Like, all this stuff that's happening, right? But at the end of the day, like, no one is forcing you to do it, right? And so there are a lot of options. And I will say that's one big thing that has changed from when I was first getting started in the gig economy until now. I mean, you've always kind of had Uber and Lyft. DoorDash and Uber Eats have really exploded. And, I think DoorDash is a pretty clear market share leader now on the food delivery side, but there are so many other options now, right? Whether you want to do, sort of like more like package delivery with Amazon Flex, Walmart Spark, which I know you've covered on your channel, Shipt, Roadie, Curry, the Point Pickup, the list goes on. And those are all like kind of big companies with hundreds of thousands of drivers. There's like lots like Courier and others that have, tens of thousands of drivers, or more regional, Bite Squad. There's all these different options and opportunities that you can work for. And I'm not saying they're all great, but I do think that, if you kind of have that eye, right? Like, if I'm living in a city and it's like, wow, new delivery company just got acquired, just raised money, just expanded, like, a little light bulb in my head goes off, right? And I might say, hey, maybe I'll look into this one, or I'll give this one a shot.
100%. I love that. And I'm getting a lot of value here too, folks, because, Harry's echoing a lot of stuff that I've been thinking and or teaching to you here in the channel. Wow. I'm trying to pick off one of the things that I was just thinking about all of that here, but that's 100% correct. Because, folks, Harry's in the Los Angeles area. I'm
Yep.
in Pittsburgh. Completely two different massive changes of market size, demographics, all of that.
Yeah.
So, for instance, California and sometimes Texas and Florida get some beta test programs first.
Yeah.
A lot of times, different apps even launch there first. Excuse me, I can think of Lime scooters when I was in San Diego.
Yeah.
And Uber purchasing a partial ownership of Lime scooters. I'm thinking about it. They did the same with the Jump scooters. So let's talk about opportunities though, because like you said, I know it's fun to talk about like, hey, $2 order for 7 miles, 50. This is garbage. That's garbage.
Mike, I think you and I were both some of the first chargers in 2018. I was here in LA in Santa Monica, and I was one of the first bird chargers in Santa Monica. And again, it was like, okay, I think I was seeing stories, fastest company to be valued at $1 billion. And I'm thinking to myself, like, light bulb in my head, like, how do they charge these damn scooters? I was using them, and then I saw on the app one day, like, sign up to be a charger, clicked on it, and they used gig workers, right? And they were paying $5, $10, $15, $20 to go out there and pick up scooters, and you could rack up dozens a night. And so, like, you could pretty quickly go in one night, make hundreds of dollars. And it didn't take a rocket scientist to realize, like, okay, they're not gonna be able to pay this forever, but while that opportunity is there, let's do it. Let's take advantage of it. It's something new. It's something fun. And also too, I think a lot of these gig economy jobs are essentially the exact same thing, right? It's getting something, a person, a place, an object from point A to point B, sometimes to point C, right? It's a point to point to point, type of system, right? You pick up a passenger, you drop them off. An Uber pool, you pick up one passenger, you drop off another one, or you pick up two, drop them both off. Like, a lot more work, right? So you want to have more money for those types of rides. But kind of, if you understand, like, at its core, like, logistics, the pickup and the drop off are the toughest part about being a rideshare driver, right? And it's similar, like, across all of these other companies too. Like, driving with a burrito or a person down the street at 35 miles an hour is pretty easy. But when you have to pick up or find safe legal parking, find your customer's address, right? Like, it's more important to drop off a person kind of in front of where they want to be. But at the same time, with a burrito, like, you don't need to drop it off right in front, but you don't want to park like a mile away either, right? So the principle and the concept is the same, but obviously with rideshare, it might be more magnified in that drop-off position versus a delivery, right? But the principle and the concept is the same. And I think that if you start, like, we try to, like, in my course, 99% of the content we do is free. And we have this little course that we do for rideshare drivers and delivery drivers in my book that, it's very inexpensive, but, like, everything we teach when I've really, like, sat down and, like, formulated a course is more about principles. It's less about, like, hey, look for these types, or, like, this kind of like advanced thing. It's more like a principle of supply and demand, or a principle of pickup and drop off.
And I always say, I appreciate you sharing that. I always say, folks, investing in yourself as a learning opportunity, whether it be a book, a course, whatever it is shortening the learning curve massively. We have resources on yourdrivermike.com. What that's going to do is provide vetted resources, like Harry does on his website as well, that are proven versus reading who knows who's.
I will say one of the most disappointing, I don't know if I would say disappointing. Yeah, kind of disappointing. Like, one of the most disappointing things of the past 10 years of running the rideshare guy is, like, no one will pay money. It's very difficult to get gig workers to pay money to invest in themselves, right? Like, we've done my course, like, honestly, we don't make much money off my courses. You could, like, easily find 50% off. If you email me, I'll probably give it to you 90% off for free. Like, this is not a big money maker for us, but it's like, we worked our ass off on this course. It's hired a videographer. It's really nice. And, it's just hard to sell things to drivers. And I think that's kind of disappointing, because you can really accelerate that. And, I get it. Sometimes it's like, I literally don't have the $50 to pay this, right? But, if you're doing Uber driving, go out and put in a few extra hours, get that $50, invest. I'm not saying you have to buy my course or my book, but, like, look for opportunities where there is clear ROI, or the payback is 1 hour, 2 hour, right? If you, like, worst case, you buy something that is potentially going to, increase your earnings by 25%, but it costs you 2 extra hours. Like, a lot of those opportunities, I think, are a no-brainer. It's sort of funny. Everyone knows Sergio, who's probably our top contributor and runs our Show Me the Money Club right now. And he, at some point, we started offering these coaching sessions on my website. And I think we charged $75 for an hour, or maybe it was a half hour with Sergio. And, I was thinking to myself, like, man, this is like a no-brainer. Like, Sergio is earning during the pandemic. We just posted screenshots. He earned $60 an hour taking advantage of Lyft Guarantee expertise in LA last weekend, right? Like this guy is very savvy, very experienced, and knows all the tips and tricks. And like whenever someone did buy that, we would sell one like every 3 months a coaching session. I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot we sold these. And every time people would be like, oh my God, I just doubled my earnings. Or oh my God, I was like 50% increase. And I'm like, at a certain point, I kind of gave up on trying to sell stuff directly to drivers. And so if you notice, like on my channel, we have courses and stuff like that, but we're rarely, in your face, like, hey, go, buy this product that we sell. It's more like, hey, we have an advertiser that we work with, or go sign up for
Right.
this company. Like, I found it much easier to sort of monetize my business from, like signing people up for, I don't know, like we're doing a campaign right now with Ford Drive to rent out the Mach-E for Uber drivers, which is a pretty cool car. And so it's like I found it so much easier to like get money from them and then try to get drivers to sign up for this program, for example.
Yeah, I get it. I mean, conversely, folks, I will 100% sell you things because I know the value is 100x. We have a YouTube coaching. We just had a client book yesterday to 10x, 1000x, your channel. And that's the thing, it's when value is 10x the price, and that's when people buy. And I'm the same way. I tell people, I don't want you to spend your last dollar on me, because I've been there. I've been flat broke with negative money in my bank account. So I get that, but it's just a shortcut. But anyway, let's get back to different apps and opportunities, because I want to ask you, what's going on that you're seeing? Because at least what I'm seeing, people are interested in like, hey, what's the next thing? DoorDash, it's great, but maybe peak pay is tapering off. I'm looking at Medical Courier. I'm looking at maybe Curry and Bungie and some of these other platforms. At large, what are you liking right now? Is it still rideshare delivery?
Yeah.
What's on your radar?
Well, I guess as my shirt would announce, I'm always a bit partial to rideshare, not just because my site is named the Rideshare Guy. I think that you can always make more money driving people than you can, driving burritos, basically, driving hamburgers, right? People will pay more for a ride for themselves than they will for their food. You have a lot of alternatives when it comes to food delivery. You can order groceries, you can go pick up groceries, you can pick up food yourself, you can not eat, you can have leftovers, you can cook dinner, right? And so I think with Uber and Lyft, there just aren't a lot of great alternatives, right? If you needed a ride to the airport tomorrow, like asking your friend for a ride would be really weird. If my friend asked me for a ride to the airport, I'd be like, dude, call an Uber, right? I don't care if it's surge pricing, I don't care if you have to pay extra, whatever it might be. I'm not taking you to the airport and sitting in the traffic at LAX. So I think that I'm always partial. And, there have been times like during the pandemic where delivery drivers were definitely making more than rideshare drivers. But I think over the long term, I think rideshare, if you want to maximize your income, I think rideshare is the best opportunity. And I think it's kind of hard to argue with that. That being said, it is more work, right? You have a passenger in the back. You have to deal with ratings. You have to deal with navigation, right? Food delivery, I call it kind of dummy proof. I think it's pretty easy. Listen to a podcast, put on some of your videos or our podcasts and, pick up food, drop it off. You only have to do 2 or 3 orders max per hour. And, I think it's a lot easier. You don't typically make as much, but I think that a lot of people, the pandemic, one thing I was surprised by was many people switched to delivery and sort of were like, hey, this is pretty easy, pretty chill job. Even if I make 10, 20, 30% less than rideshare, I'm going to stick with it because it's so much easier, right? And so I think that at a high level, that's sort of how I see rideshare and delivery. Delivery specifically, I think that there has been so much kind of excitement and opportunity and investment. DoorDash today is not what it was 3 years ago. Like we had DoorDash articles and videos before, and no one read it. Now, like half of our traffic is delivery stuff, on the blog and the YouTube channel. And so, we don't even cover delivery on a daily basis, like your channel does, for example. So I think that delivery at a high level, ton of interest. DoorDash is kind of like that big one. It's like Uber and Lyft. DoorDash and Uber Eats is sort of how I see it in food delivery. And the cool thing about delivery, like I already mentioned, there's so many other opportunities, right? So that's kind of, I can't really point to one specific one. But again, I think if you think about that principle of looking for new companies that have raised a lot of money, sort of categories that are exciting. Like if marijuana, becomes legal in 40 states over the next few years or whatever, right? Like that would be a vertical, alcohol delivery. There's all these different verticals that, I think if there's some, there could be a good opportunity right now and maybe just no one knows about it. But I always look for like some impetus, like, hey, why are these trending, or why should I keep, they're expanding to a new city like Walmart Spark, for example. Seems like over the past year or so, they've really been pushing their footprint, and like, I'm sure some, meeting or PowerPoint, at Walmart, they're like, all right, we got to invest more at Walmart Spark. Here's $1 billion. Like, go, hire a bunch of drivers and give bonuses and, double the customers or whatever. I don't know what happened, but you can kind of tell something happened, right? And there's a lot more interest and excitement. So that's sort of how I see the general landscape.
That's really interesting. I want to lead into that, talking about rideshare versus delivery, because yes, I mean, just watching your
Actually, yeah, and
channel.
I'm curious, do you agree or disagree on the pay?
No, I agree with that. I was thinking about that, and I feel like, I did 2 weeks, 2 separate weeks of the Hertz Uber Tesla rental program, separate weeks. The one was on Halloween weekend of last year. I'm probably going to do it again this year because it's such a huge driving earnings opportunity here in Pittsburgh, at least. But just generally thinking about that, I know it's completely different. I feel like a lot of side hustle, gig workers might not want to do rideshare just because of the safety implications.
Yeah.
And I think that's number one. I mean, I could talk about anything else.
That's a good point. There are a lot of, I mean, I guess you could call them downsides, trade-offs. I mean, yeah, you're having drunk people get into your car, picking up people, could be fake name, like obviously all these videos go viral of passengers attacking drivers. And, I mean, Uber and Lyft do millions of rides a day, right? So like
Yes.
10 incidents a day is still a tiny number. And, what do they say? Like a 1 in a million chance. Like you basically have, I don't know, maybe you have a 1 in a million chance of something really, really serious going on, right? And so, but that being said, right, like taxi driving, I remember reading this report from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, the BLS. They said that taxi driving was one of the top 10 most dangerous jobs. And kind of you think about it, you're like, yeah, that makes sense. Like a lot of cash rides, picking up random people off the street late night, they've been drinking, kind of a recipe for disaster. Uber and Lyft, obviously they solve some of that. There's credit card, there's a rating system, but you're still picking random people up, at late at night. And obviously they've often been drinking. So totally get that concern. And I think that's why we see a lot more female delivery drivers than rideshare drivers. And we also see, like on grocery shopping, I've seen a lot more female shoppers, for Instacart. So, it depends, male versus female, region to region, I think also matters. So, there might be different opportunities depending on the region. But, to me, it kind of like, I think understanding what type of person are you? Are you like the type of person you want to make as much money as possible, as quickly as possible? Even within rideshare, we hear from people, one of our top contributors, Drake Crater, I remember he told me he never does Friday and Saturday nights because, he kind of prefers driving the day. It's like easier to see. It's easier to get around. Like driving at night, you have to deal with drunk people and, you have to, it's literally physically sometimes harder to drive around at night, right? Because it's like harder to see and more drunk people on the road and things like that. So I think kind of like, to me, I really like educating people based off my own experience and the data and other people, drivers' experience on like what the potential is. And then from there, sort of designing it to fit your life, your lifestyle, your goals, everything else that you might care about.
Yeah. And I agree with a lot of that because, you and I have done thousands of rides. When I first started in 2015 and I went strongly until, I don't know, 2018 or 19, that I primarily did 10 p.m. until 4 a.m. here in Pittsburgh. Now, again, like you said, it's knowing your marketplace. I knew, University of Pittsburgh's right here, all these, campuses, that most everyone was a student partying at those hours, what have you. But there's always that, and I did it in San Diego too. There's a very, very, very small, like you said, either a statistic, what have you, but it's always a consideration. Yeah. Because I think someone, like, people always say like, well, a burrito's never going to do anything to me in the back seat. I like the earnings opportunity. And again, I feel like I'm going to do another one of those Tesla Hertz rentals just to see, because I like to at least have my foot on the, the pulse of the industry at least a little bit, in addition to, videos like yours. So what else you talked about Spark expanding. Amazon Flex actually opened a new warehouse here in Pittsburgh down in the North for Sales area. Nice. What do you think? I want to talk about some of those apps. What do you think about Spark? I've had wait time problems with their warehouses. Amazon Flex, I did a retail delivery. Harry, it took me from Settlers Ridge here in Pittsburgh, 40 minutes into, well, actually it was down into West Virginia, because some of those apps, I guess more with Amazon Flex, because you don't know where you're going. Now, Spark, you have the requests.
Yeah.
What do you think about some of those other apps in that delivery space?
Yeah, I'll be honest. I feel like I've heard mixed reviews of a lot
Mm,
of the different apps, right? I think it can really, vary depending on where you are, how badly they need drivers. I mean, even what customers, if they're fully dependent on one big customer, catering or, kind of like Walmart type client, and then that
exactly.
customer starts paying less, they're going to just pass that right on to you, right? So it's like, I think there's a lot more variability versus Uber. Like if anyone came to me and was like, who should I drive rideshare tomorrow? I tell them Uber. If someone was like, who should I drive for food delivery tomorrow? I'd say DoorDash, right? It's like clear in a way. They're the leaders. You're going to get a pretty consistent experience. I mean, like some cities obviously pay more than others if they're, like a top demand, top 10, top 5 by population type city. But I feel like with the Walmart Sparks, the Amazon Flexes, kind of all of those like big but not giant companies that I call them, like they have hundreds of thousands of drivers but not millions of drivers. I think that it's just like honestly, I don't know if I can give sort of like blanket advice like, oh, this is great or this is bad. I think it's kind of like you got to try it and see. So I think that, like, again, like using those principles, like maybe if you're hearing from other drivers like how awesome it is, give it a try. Or if you see that they expand, right, like maybe that's the impetus that I would use. Like if I've been thinking about Walmart Spark and they've been in my city for a year, and like everyone's already kind of driving for them, like I don't know, unless I see something like a guarantee or a bonus or something that kind of indicates to me that like I should go give this a shot, I don't know that I would just like randomly pick one of these delivery apps. Like I think some insight, I need to have some insight that would, kind of, otherwise there's just too many of them out there, right? And it's like, how do you pick? You might get a little bit lost because there's so many options out there.
Exactly. And folks, that's why we're a team here. And this is in part why, I
Yeah.
mean, Harry and his team have been reaching out to me, folks. My apologies. We finally got him here on the channel, but looking at other resources and not just, and like I always say, I'm one driver in literally one marketplace, here in the States. That's sure I can give you a feedback of what I'm seeing when
Yeah.
I'm seeing echoed across other videos, drivers, forums, etc. But it's free to sign up. And
Yeah.
funny enough, I
Well,
signed up
I
for.
think, I mean, it is free, but it also isn't. Like, I actually, when we were talking, I don't know if I've ever really put it this way, but I think like drivers and gig workers have to understand their value, right? Like, hey, if you're typically working for
I
DoorDash
say,
and you have Uber Eats, if some other company wants you, like, they have to show something like you're more valuable to them. Like if they need drivers, they need you
yep,
more than you need them, right? If you already have something going with DoorDash or Uber Eats, right? Like if you hate it, if you hate driving DoorDash, then maybe you got to go find something else, right? But it's like, think about like your baseline. What's your baseline for another company to come and get me to try them out, like to spend time researching the app, go through the sign up process? Like I almost think about it like they got to pay me, right? Like maybe it's a bonus, where they literally pay me to try it out. Or maybe it's something where like, hey, this, I'm taking a bet, right? Like I would want to take a bet that like I'm going to have better earnings or this is going to be a better experience. And so I think if you kind of start valuing yourself like that, then that sort of line of thinking applies. Like, hey, when you get a trip, it's the same principle, right? When you get a certain trip, like, is this trip worth my time? Would I rather sit
yes,
back and take one trip an hour for $10, or well, maybe that's not a good example, one trip for $20 per
sure,
hour, than two trips for $12, right? Like I personally, I'd probably take one, I'd probably rather make $20 and do half the work than do double the work and make $4
yeah,
extra, which would only be whatever, I don't know, my math is horrible, 20% more,
I
right? So
gotcha, yeah.
every person is different though. So I think if you understand the type of person you are, and then you can kind of apply those principles to each trip, each gig, your daily, your weekly, trying out a new service, whatever it might be.
Yeah, because it's almost the allure of, yeah, there is next to no barrier of entry, sign up, background check, all that.
Yeah.
But then you can go online. But like you said, it's your time. You're really arguably the most valuable resource. So
Yeah.
it's even if, hey, there's a better bonus pay opportunity on point pickup or whatever it is, you can literally audible, unless
Yeah.
you're on like flex, let's say, and you're locked into like a 3 hour, driving shift, but you can audible basically at any
Yeah.
time. So it's exactly, it's knowing your
And
worth, your
obviously, I
value.
think you've chatted about that. You've done a lot of videos about this, and some people even take this to this extreme with the multi-apping. I think even
Yeah.
like I have I have definitely been guilty. Like I think I've been accepted an Uber trip and I'll leave my Lyft app on in the past, like not every
Yeah.
time, but
No,
it's
I
like,
get
hey, if
it.
I get like a killer Lyft order and I have $15 Uber
Yeah.
ride and I get a killer Lyft order that's super high payout, whatever it might be, like there might be a situation where I would cancel that Uber trip. Obviously you can't cancel rides too frequently or they'll,
Right.
get you in trouble. Your
Right.
acceptance rate doesn't matter, but your cancellation rate definitely matters. And, it's kind of a shitty experience for that passenger I accepted on. But at the end of the day, like I kind of, I'm a cutthroat business owner, right? Like running a business is tough. If you really want to succeed, if you really want to make the most amount of money possible. And we've had some more controversial videos over the years that are kind of like these types of strategies, because I definitely understand they're not for everyone. And some people will be like, oh, Harry, you're an asshole, or, think about what you're doing to that passenger. But again, I think if you kind of understand like what type of driver you want to be, what type of person you want to be, especially when it comes to running a business. And I kind of always err on the sort of more aggressive side because running a business is really tough. And, whether when you're a gig worker, whether you realize it or not, you're a business owner. So I think you got to have that mindset that like you always have to be looking for what's best, what's next, maximizing your opportunities and your income.
Yeah, 100%. Well said. There's a lot of things to consider. If I want to drive on app AB, if I want to Audible, take something else that pops up that is like $4 a mile, but
Yeah,
also playing within the rules and having a bit of that
exactly.
gray zone of like, well, I'm
Yeah,
allowed to cancel. I know they're going to hate me for it, but I'm playing within the
right.
rules of my completion rate, acceptance rate.
Exactly. I mean, you're probably allowed, let's say you're allowed to cancel one out of every 20
Sure.
trips, right? So if you are going to cancel, make it count, right? So it's almost like, you get I mean, I don't know, get out of jail free card, but you get some sort of like one, what it's like insurance basically, right? So it's like if you have insurance and you're paying for it, you might as well use it, right? And use it when it matters. So that's kind of how I think about it.
Yeah. Having a tool and not using it is just nothing, is it? You're
Kind
not
of a
even
waste.
using the options available. So,
Like
Harry,
the sick days, right? Like I think people are like, oh, I
100%.
never call in
And
sick,
then
and
you
I'm
never
like,
use it.
I don't know if you're not rewarded for never calling in sick, but maybe you should stay home when you're sick. But that's
Yeah,
the
it's
kind of type
like,
of person I'm in. That's probably why I don't work for someone else and I work for myself.
well, I get it. It's like having the end of your year saying like, hey, look how hard I worked and I didn't
Yeah,
use, I used like two of my, like, come on, you gotta, I mean,
yeah,
this is a benefit to you.
yeah.
Very much applies to having the freedom and flexibility of these different apps. So Harry, leave our audience with kind of, I'm really curious, a next steps kind of future proofing as much as you can, obviously,
Hmm.
because I'm really interested in overall wealth building. I think that's where we're
Yeah,
going with the channel. And obviously our cornerstone's always the side hustle and the gig
yeah,
economy. But I encourage, obviously take care of the bills first, get net positive, get out of the red first, pay off the debts first. But I'm encouraging investing, real estate. Like, where do you see kind of, I guess we can either go gig economy at large,
hmm,
or where should someone go maybe after the gig economy? Should
yeah.
they do it and then just do like a business, W-2 stuff? Like, kind of what's your roadmap for the future for someone?
Yeah. Well, I definitely feel like folks that are working in the gig economy, it's for a reason. They like the money, they like the flexibility, they like not having a boss, setting their own hours. I think it's pretty clear that like that's kind of going down the route of owning your own business. Like I don't hear of too many people who go out and, do Uber driving and love it and kill it and then like, oh, let me go back to a normal day job, right? Because it's very different and restrictive in a lot of ways. So I really look at the gig economy as perfect practice for running your own business. People love to complain about, the take rate that Uber and Lyft's, or DoorDash or the offers that they send. You can't negotiate, like if you're a plumber, right, you can obviously say, hey, this job is going to cost $100. And, with all these platforms, they tell you what the price is and you have to accept it or not. You don't get to negotiate. I guess there's this new one, InDrive, where you can, but for everyone else, there's no negotiation. And so I think I really like that concept of, hey, use the gig economy. Like, what are Uber and Lyft and DoorDash great at? They're great at finding you customers. If you're in any top city, you log onto the app, they start sending you orders. It may not be at the price point you want, but they've taken care of that, right? So it's like, all right, you've just started a business. You don't have to worry about finding customers. That's the hardest part of any new business, right? So I really think of it as like studying the business side and really understanding, like, hey, where can I leverage what I'm learning here? Whether it's like, thinking about like, taxes or liability, LLC, whatever it is, like kind of all the stuff that I've done to do my business, the rideshare guy, right? Like, hey, I don't want to just have Uber. as my sole income source. If I'm a driver, I want to diversify sources. I don't just want rideshare, right? Pandemic hits and now my business doesn't make any money. I also want delivery, right? And so I think all these principles, it's like you kind of learn them whether you realize it or not, driving in the gig economy, and then use that as practice, right? To kind of go out if you do want to go and, sort of create your own business. So that's sort of what I would advise, or what I like, and what I kind of see. A lot of people, they like working in the gig economy. Some people stay for a long time. Others want to transition out of the gig economy. And I feel like when they do transition out of the gig economy, it's often something very entrepreneurial, or, they're a business owner, or they want to become a public notary, or they want to do real estate, or they want to start their own restaurant, or whatever it might be. And so I think, like, take advantage of your time as a gig worker to really kind of practice and hone in those skills that you're going to need as a business owner. Because I mean, I've been running the rideshare guy for 9, 10 years, and I think we're doing a pretty good job, and it's gotten easier. But I mean, running a business is tough, and it's a grind too. So there's sometimes it's nice if you could think about, like, wow, I would never have to work for a customer again. If you're running a business and you never have to think about getting a customer, that's pretty awesome.
Man, folks, that gets me pumped up. I hope that gets you pumped up too. Yes, you already have it in you. You're already doing, this entrepreneurship. You're already trying to do more, whether it be a side hustle or a full-time hustle. It's already in you. And look, I always say, folks, I just want you to hit your number. If you want to do rideshare food delivery full-time, love it. If you want to lily pad to something else, or just do it and then just pay off the debt, whatever it is, and drop off. Exactly. And that's what Harry and I help you with. It's making money, and what that's doing is giving you options. So, folks, Harry, thank you again for being here. We'll have show notes listed down below in the description of his website and more. Feel free to check out his channel as well. Tons of resources. A whole team continues to provide insane value over there as well. Harry, thanks again.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks for having me, Mike.
Folks, I am so pumped. I hope you got value in that. Drop a like on this video if you want to see Harry back for more. It's been a pleasure. It was very enjoyable for me to talk to someone who I've, again, taken a lot of inspiration from and learned from in this gig economy. And I am just flat out super pumped to talk to you in 2024 and beyond about the side hustle economy and wealth building as well. See you next time.